Hey everyone, it's Steven from Campus Inc. and we are back with another episode of the NIL show. One of our co-hosts is busy getting married. Sean got married on Saturday. He is on his way to Greece. Funniest email response.
100%. Much better situation than where we're at. And like you said, one of the best out offices I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it said I'm either standing at the altar nervous or I'm on a flight to Greece. But we have a very special guest today. I will let our co-host Adam introduce. Adam?
Yeah, super excited. Episode 8 here, joined by Michelle Meyer. Michelle has a wide range of experiences in athletics and definitely in the NIL space. So she has experience with USA Volleyball, working as a beach high performance coordinator. She's worked in a number of different volleyball capacities and partnerships. She spent time at Huddle. She ran her own beach volleyball consulting agency for a while. And she currently is the founder of the NIL Network, as well as the name, image, and likeness coordinator at San Diego State University. Michelle Meyer, we are super honored to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Gosh, when you rattle them off like that, it sounds like I've been to a lot of different places.
I know, right? How many lifetimes have you lived, right?
From what we've seen, you do a lot of them at the same time. What is your full-time job? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I started at San Diego State in November as their NIL coordinator. So typically I'm in the office. I'm actually out in Las Vegas right now at the NACTA convention. So just really excited to meet all the people that, I've been Zooming with over the past 2 years, all the NIL companies, all the different NIL delegates from around the country. I had the pleasure of meeting Adam last week when he was in Southern California, which was awesome because him and I have had numerous conversations as well. And it's just so nice to kind of be back in some kind of real life capacity.
That's awesome. Tell us about that show in Vegas. What's that all about?
Yeah. So actually, it was kind of a last minute decision for myself to come out here. Really just got some FOMO when all the people who are going to be out and they were reaching out asking to meet up. And what it is it's a convention for college athletic administrators. So they have different tracks, whether you're an athletic director or you're a sports information director. They also have student athlete development. I'm sure that they'll add an NIL track probably next year. I know that there's some NIL specific sessions, but so it's really just a meeting of, gosh, I don't even know what the numbers are. I'd imagine thousands of these administrators getting together from all over the country. First time in person since 2019. So everyone's pretty excited.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I think we've all seen, anybody who's in the NIL space has seen, everybody heading out there, the excitement around that. The NIL Summit was just a couple weeks ago as well. So lots of cool events happening in the NIL space. Obviously being, pretty brand new. Does the event officially start on Tuesday, right? This is kind of the pre-stuff going on right now.
I think it started today. I haven't been down there yet today because I had a number of different things. I just booked my flight last Thursday. $58 round trip flight from San Diego. So pretty good deal.
That's a nice
there.
quick flight.
Yeah, under an hour, pretty easy, but definitely had some pre-commitments with some meetings and different work things I wanted to get done today, and then go out and enjoy the 110 degree heat out here.
$58, that's cheaper than gas it would take you to drive over there, so that's a good deal.
Shocked.
I'm curious to see, and maybe we'll have to have you on for a follow-up, but I'm just curious, about what the kind of the conversation around NIL will be. We've seen in the media, and you've seen, running the NIL network, it's such a polarizing space. We've talked about that a lot on this show. I know you've talked about it a lot. I'd be curious, how do you think a room full of athletic administrators, what's the sentiment, do you feel like, around kind of the NIL conversation so far?
Yeah, I think it just is completely different all over the country, depending on the level you're at, Power 5, probably the conference you're in, even, the region. It was just really interesting to look at in the NIL space. And I know, obviously, the SEC and the Power 5 conferences are usually the leaders of the pack in terms of any monumental change. And then, obviously, the revenue generating sports are the ones that are leading the way as well. But if you look at kind of the map of how this has grown, it really does start in the Southeast. And it hasn't made its way fully west to California yet. In terms of the collectives, even like the different resources that are being provided and all of these components. Like it's almost looking back in the day when, California, or not California, the American movement was all moving west. Yeah, the gold rush. And it's like, I don't know. It's I would imagine the conversation and sentiment around it's very different.
And what's interesting, I will say I would agree a lot of our NIL conversations have been, we've had a few out west, but what's interesting is the legislation really passed and was most open and is most open in California and out west. Why do you think it's taking so long to get there, right? Like, what do you think the reasoning is?
Oh, I don't know. I would say that the SEC is probably the most competitive conference, and that they can't manage to lose any kind of recruiting advantage, right? So they want to implement as many resources as possible. They also have the biggest profit margins in terms of resources on campus to be able to provide things for their athletes, and then their fan bases as well. It's just nothing like what we see out in California, coastal California especially. We have USC, UCLA, originally in West Coast. We got Washington and Arizona, Washington State. So we have the Pac-12, but it's not the same level of that like crazy sports fan that you would find out in the South and the East and even the Midwest. So.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit of that, like you can't afford not to. So it's like we're just going to go after it and figure out or deal with the consequences as they come. And yeah, it's interesting seeing the multitude of conferences even that are on the West Coast as well, and some of the different resources and markets that are available even in the conference breakdown. In coastal California for sure.
What was really, when I started NIL Network back in November of 2020 and started kind of following all the different state legislation and how, California was the first to pass their law, and then Florida was the first to put the most, July 1st as their enactment date. And then I think I was talking to someone one day and they're like, all the other SEC states, so Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, like their coaches were going to lobby like their state governments to get these bills passed. And that's the moment I went, this is different out there. Like, and people are saying, if Alabama doesn't have a state NIL law that goes into effect on July 1st, and then Alabama does not win the national championship that year, like whoever is the government of Alabama is probably not going to have his job the following election season. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting.
Different ball game, no pun intended.
Yeah, different level of fansmanship for sure.
And I think what's crazy is you said like they can't afford to miss out on recruiting. That being said, NIL cannot be used for recruiting. What do you mean by that? They can't afford to miss out.
Yeah, so if we pretend like there isn't some egregious violations of using NIL for recruiting inducements, really anything that an athletic department is providing, it all kind of ties back into recruiting. So if it's even, we take out NIL, if it's student athlete development resources, if it's a new stadium, if it is shiny locker rooms, all of those things and all that money that they're putting into it, yeah, it's really nice for the current student athletes on campus, but they also know that it's going to be utilized by their coaches to go out on the recruiting trail and say, hey, you come to a school like at San Diego State, we've got a beautiful new stadium opening up this fall. I think that is the number one. I would be using it as my number one seller if I was out on the road recruiting for football, or, soccer's playing there, some lacrosse games as well, because who doesn't want to play in a brand new stadium? It's beautiful.
Yeah. And so to clarify, it's not that NIL is directly used for inducement, meaning if you come here, these are the deals you're going to get. It's if you come here, look at the ecosystem that we've built and the opportunities that are available. More like, at Illinois here, we have a really good business career services center where Deloitte's connected in and KPMG's connected in. If you go to Illinois, they're at the career fair and you have probably a pretty good chance to working with them. I think, what's interesting is the conversation is now changing to how do we make that experience just like our shiny locker rooms, right? What else do you see? I've seen a lot of job openings for NIL across the country. What else are you seeing schools start to really focus on for NIL? Like, is it opportunities? Is it education? Is it taking an internship class? Like, what are you seeing happen?
Yeah, I think it's, again, everyone is kind of just trying to figure out what goes into a good NIL program and what resources should they be providing for their athletes. What do they need to outsource versus what can they look internally to? Like you mentioned, the business schools of entrepreneurship, law schools. I think a really cool opportunity. Oklahoma State was one of the first I saw do it, but they built the Brand Squad, which connects their business students who are studying to be, or they're studying sports business or potentially marketing, with the athletes on campus there to get a real life experience, build their resume. And they work with the athletes on building a marketing plan, social media plan, kind of strategizing around where to find different NIL opportunities. And I'm like, that is so cool. That's something we want to do at San Diego State as well, because I think that it's so rewarding for the students on campus to be able to get that real life experience, but then also for our athletes, like, sure, I usually sit in the office. They can come in and talk to me as much as they want, but there's 500 of them. I can't manage 500, consulting sessions for as much as they would potentially need them in time. So I think tapping into the resources on campus is something I hope continues to grow.
Yeah, and I love that whole model is so brilliant too, right? Because like you said, the resources, regardless of how big your athletics department is or how much your university is willing to commit resources, you still have finite hours in the day. But there are, seemingly an unlimited amount of resources if you distribute them across campus of people who want to learn about this, people who want to collaborate. And that even adds to not only the professional experience, but also to the story of the athlete saying, hey, I'm tying this back to my institution. We say all the time, NIL kind of created 180,000 micro influencers, right? And what a great opportunity to kind of tap into that at your institution.
Talk to us now about NIL Network. Like, in the middle of you getting this new career, you're like, hey, why don't I start another company? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so NIL Network really started in, I guess, when I was coaching at University of Hawaii. I coached the beach volleyball program out there for a few years. That's when the O'Bannon case got settled, which I think is really one of the first times that people were looking at name, image, likeness from a national public awareness type perspective. And I was like, okay, this is going to come to college sports sooner than later. Fast forward a couple of years to 2019, California passes SB 206. I think initial enactment date of January 1st, 2023, giving the NCAA plenty of time to come around and make their changes. But at that point, I was like, okay, like NCAA was saying, we're going to kick out the California schools, or we're not going to allow them to play in championships. Myself, born and raised in California, I was like, this might be kind of cool, actually. We could get a new organization. They'll take all the California schools. We'd get all the best recruits because we'd all have NIL rights. And really, I started trying to engage whoever would talk to me about NIL in conversations. I was super into it. I was blogging about it, just loved the concept, and was like, this is something that college athletes have deserved for decades. Fast forward another year to the fall of 2020, and an article popped up on NIL, and I was like, holy moly, how did I lose sight of everything that's been happening over the past year? And really, I think it's because of COVID, no sports, everyone was very distracted, obviously trying to deal with this global pandemic. And in that time, though, Florida had passed their NIL law. NCAA was meant to initially vote on their NIL legislation in January 2021. And so this was coming in 2021. And as I started Googling around, it was like, man, nobody is talking about this topic that is legitimately the biggest change of college sports since Title IX. And I don't know. I looked up, tried to find like a hub of content and information. At that point, there was really a couple news articles, and that was about it. And I was like, what can I pull together these resources for people to try to understand this massive change that's coming? And so started NIL Network, I think November of 2020, really just aggregating together articles, trying to make sense of everything that was coming. And in that time, because it was such an entrepreneur heavy space, of course, with it being a new industry, people started reaching out, wanting to meet. And I'm like, man, this is so much fun, and learning about this topic and everything that's coming. And so it really just kept going from there. And then I was in San Diego at the time. San Diego State was, I think, one of the first 5 universities in the country to hire an NIL specific position. And I was like, this is just serendipitous, I guess, because so got in there, and it's been fantastic, but a lot to juggle kind of both roles, even though obviously there's a ton of overlap between what I do at San Diego State and what I do for NIL Network. But yeah, it's been a ride.
What's really cool though, I mean, and I'm on the website right now, so it's nilnetwork.com. There's coaching and advising, learning labs, consulting, weekly drop-ins, partnership. But really the cool part is like there's guidance for all stakeholders. So whether you're a friend, a parent, an athlete, a coach, someone interested in the career, there's something for you. And I don't think there's anything really like this in our space. So, San Diego is probably like feel pretty cool that they have now a thought leader who's aggregating all of this, which this is a massive undertaking. I'm like going through this website right now and I'm like, there's even a database for collectives, which is really, really cool. So
we're coming up on the year anniversary, right? So, what has changed? What's changed kind of as you've seen both the management of the NIL network? Like, how has your day-to-day changed? What conversations have you found that you've either started having or have stopped having as we've progressed through the year?
Yeah, I think, and that's actually a great cut. There's going to be a ton of articles, of course, that come out over the next few weeks about 1 year of NIL and kind of the progression of it. But, come July 1st of last year, we saw some big deals happen. I think for all student athletes, I won't say all, but a lot of student athletes are very excited and they're like, man, now's my time. I'm going to get a car. I'm going to get $1 million. It's great. My DMs are open. People reach out to me. And you're like, and that's something I think that we've had to walk back a little bit to say, yes, that is a reality for the 0.001%. Those celebrity quarterbacks with $1 million or the 1 million followers and whatnot. But actually, as anything in work, anything that's going to get you paid, it's going to be work, and you're going to have to create a plan, and you're going to have to strategize about this. And so I think that that's been interesting. Of course, I come from Olympic sport background, and so that's something I'm really passionate about, is making sure that it's access for all athletes that want to take advantage of NIL. But it really does take quite a bit of education to be like, okay, like it's not just, nobody's really doing handouts here for unless you have that kind of celebrity status that we've seen. So I think that's been a shift. Obviously, the collectives have kind of stolen the limelight in the last 6 to 8 months or so. And I think that that's going to be a really big challenge for the NCAA to sort out, just because it's I don't really know how they're going to do that. But yeah, we'll just keep moving forward and see what happens.
I guess I'd be curious to hear, you've probably seen some pretty cool deals come across your, whether it's your office or through the network. And you talked about inclusive and opportunities for maybe non-revenue generating sports. Is there any specific deal that you've seen go through or anything that's happened with those edge cases that you're really proud of? Maybe something that hasn't been uncovered yet, because we only hear about the big ones, right? But the small ones that still have a lot of force, we don't hear about. Do you have any examples of anything you're pretty passionate about that you've heard recently?
Yeah, and I think that that's been a frustration as well, and nothing that I can do about it, and it's going to continue. But really, the media, of course, is going to be picking up the car deals, and today Twitter's a storm again with $10 million or $12 million or whatever those rumors are. But I think the thing that's really, really cool for me is seeing some of the entrepreneurial elements come out for these athletes, and it's something I'm trying to highlight on NIL Network, which is still a teeny tiny little database on there, but I have one that is college athlete businesses that I've seen started over the last year. And they range from, that Florida State football player who started a charity, a couple different charitable functions, to clothing lines, to running a camp series, bunch of different things on there. And I'm like, this is real NIL. And this is something that these athletes are going to take with them after they graduate as resume builders, as even businesses, and also the connections that they build while they're running that, I think are going to be really cool as well.
I think it's cool to talk to athletes when they start asking you about taxes. Like, hey, should I set myself up as a corporation? I'm like, this is awesome. Yes. This is awesome. We had Sydney Stevens, who was on one of the episodes and actually spoke at the summit. She started Mindbend and she's doing photo shoots with it. And, I think those need to be highlighted more and more and more to show athletes that it's it's not just about the million followers or whatever. There's so many, like, I love the opportunity of like camps, right? Like every college athlete should be running camps, right? And there's no reason why they're not their hometown hero going back and working in their communities over the summer in their off season and stuff like that. That's super, 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 super cool. Adam, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say two things actually. The first is, I think that actually was what the intention of the change in legislation was, right? Is to allow these athletes to, to be able to actually monetize things in ways that would prepare them for the business world, prepare them for life after sport. And Stephen, you were just talking about camps. I think there's a lot of sports out there that there's kind of there's a sort of a path to professionalism. I'm thinking of beach volleyball actually specifically, but that path to professionalism is really via sponsorships, right? And you don't get sponsorships without being able to build a brand and have a brand. So have you, you're obviously super close to the volleyball world, particularly beach volleyball. How have you seen NIL impact those types of opportunities and some of those pathways to professionalism?
Yeah, I actually put a lot of brain power behind this probably 2 months ago, as I was just kind of hypothesizing, because beach volleyball as it is right now is not a sustainable professional sport. Like you're saying, you have to get sponsorships or you're working side hustles. Usually the pro athletes that fall outside, the top 3 to 4 teams are working 3 to 4 jobs on the side. They're trying to hustle, get sponsorships and whatnot. And so I think that NIL, and beach volleyball is only a female sport right now in college, only a women's sport, but it allows them to get that experience way earlier. So they can start to understand what these sponsorships and partnerships look like, what goes into them, what to look for in a contract, how to negotiate, understanding what they're worth and not their worth, but what the value is. And also, even though they can't or shouldn't be signing into contracts that extend beyond their NCAA eligibility, they're still building those relationships. And I gave the example, Haley Harward, who played at USC beach volleyball, has just graduated out. She had a couple really cool partnerships in her last year at USC and now is pursuing professional beach volleyball. I'm like, there's no way that those don't continue, which is just getting an absolute leg up off of these previous athletes that had to graduate out and be like, oh crap, now I've got to figure out not only the professional side, hiring my own coach, making my training schedule, finding a partner. Do I need strength and conditioning? Do I need a sports psychologist? But I also got to figure out how I'm going to make enough money to pay for all of these services and the tournaments and all this stuff. So I think that it's going to really, really help not only those individual athletes, but it also could kind of grow the sport as well, because the athletes aren't as concerned about that money side of things, and that's kind of more taken care of. They can focus on the sport and also growing their brand while in college is something that they'll take with them after they graduate as well.
So I love this whole like leg up, like you're just starting early, do you foresee like classes for college credit in NIL? Like where, a college athlete could take an NIL, start my brand, NIL 102, right? Like, do you ever see something like that happen and curriculum being created out of it?
I think there's a couple schools that have done it already, and they're open to all students on campus, which I think is really cool. I think they usually fall in like the entrepreneurship department or area, and I think that that'll continue to grow. I mean, it's interesting though, because at San Diego State, I'm like, man, I really want to put together a course, and I think that would be awesome. And it's like, let's figure out what we're doing first, and then let's look towards that. And I'm like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I text because Adam, you teach at Northwestern, and I'm like, NIL 101. We got to teach. We got to teach this class.
100%. Yeah. Well, and I think there is actually a massive opportunity because, if you look at student athletes, there are a lot of activity courses that get folded into your curriculum, right? There are a lot of things that are built into kind of your academic pathway that support, where you're heading with your degree. And, I think that we'll continue to see that. It's a huge opportunity, and yeah, it'd be so fun. Let us know how that goes at San Diego State. We'd love to be consultants there on.
Yeah,
how that,
I was actually
how that goes.
we talk to Mark Cuban's team very often, and I'm like, could we start an NIL accelerator? right? Like an NIL jumpstart your intake applications and try and like, yeah, let's just figure it out, right? Like it truly is a blue ocean of opportunities. But it's hard to say no right now. Like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I want to shift. We talked a lot about NIL Network and your role there. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk like, well, okay. So what does your day to day look like in your coordinator role at SDSU? You know, we've had Cam Cox on here, who's been at Illinois. We've had a couple of different people in the institutional space, and it's so interesting hearing the different perspectives, the different approaches. Maybe areas of conservatism versus being progressive. What's your day-to-day look like at SDSU?
Yeah. So I think, in the first few months in there, and just I fall under technically the compliance department, or the senior director of compliance is my supervisor. However, my office sits in student athlete development, and kind of around academics. So it's a very high traffic area with athletes coming and going. Not as much right now during summer, but for the school year. So for the first couple months there, it was really just putting together a strategic plan and like what I really saw going into this program, which for myself, the priorities were, we were integrating in really high level topics of NIL into our student athlete development program that's called Aztecs Going Pro. Now, one thing I was pretty adamant about was, NIL is not for everyone. And I don't think that everyone should be forced to do NIL, which is, it's going to grow as new classes of athletes come in are more prepared. But I think in this first year, that really mandatory education turned off a ton of student athletes to even the concept of NIL. So I'm like, okay, like if we put high level topics into student athlete development that pertain to professional development as well. So looking at like building your brand, but looking at once you graduate out, somebody's going to be Googling your name, what's going to show up and how can you control that narrative versus having like whoever else control it. And oh, by the way, building your personal brand is also great for NIL. And so we built that in. I really wanted to get a university specific platform. Now, of course, we've seen the collectives from around the country. I was like, I don't necessarily need one of those, but I would love to have, student athlete empowerment, which is a very simple landing page, essentially. It's called Empower Aztecs, and anyone can go on there, fill out a form, and then student athlete empowerment will get in touch and facilitate that deal for whatever local business or fan, along with the San Diego State athletes. And now the reason I really needed something like that was because I think the huge opportunity in San Diego is to engage the local community. Like while we don't have that rabid fan base that you see in the SEC that's just throwing millions of dollars at these athletes, we do have so many local businesses and not a lot of competition for the sports sponsorship dollars. Like, we have the San Diego Padres essentially is the only professional franchise in San Diego. We don't have a football team anymore. We don't have a basketball team. So those two sports are the professional teams in the city of San Diego, which is millions of people. And so I'm saying I need one of those platforms so I can get out and educate the local businesses on the ROI they can get from working with some of our athletes. And so we got that in place. We got the education in place. I've been out kind of hosting webinars and attending different events, which I will continue to do throughout the summer and the fall with the community. And then it's really just getting creative with some different initiatives. Like I'd love to build something similar to the Brand Squad at Oklahoma State. We're trying to figure out one of the biggest kind of pain points right now is as athletes are starting to sign in with more representation, whether that's agency, sports agents, marketing, management, whatever that looks like, understanding the terms that they're signing to, because there are some very, very bad and tragic contracts out there. But the athletes are so excited that they are like, oh, this person wants to represent me. I'm going to sign it. And I'm like, oh, let's just like step back.
Michelle, what have you seen? This is Adam and I talk a lot about this, right? Like, how does agency affect NIL? What have you seen gone well? What have you seen gone wrong? Because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen one contract from like a agency type thing that I would have I can't greenlight them. I can't redline the contracts. I'm not a lawyer. I'm also an employee of the institution that tells me, I can't do that. I can educate the athletes on some different things to look at in the contract. And if it's really, really, really bad, I say, hey, I would highly recommend you get a attorney, a family friend, somebody to go over this and really, really make sure you understand every single word in it before you sign in. However, in saying that, I do encourage our athletes to get representation if they have someone that they know and trust, because they're going to get more NIL opportunities and bigger deals from having someone going out and sourcing those opportunities for them than they'll ever find on like a marketplace or if they're just doing it themselves. And so it's kind of like it's a hard space to be in because I'm like, yes, go do it, but don't do it like that.
Do it the right way.
Yeah. So it's tough. And that's definitely, I think, one of the biggest issues I see in this industry right now.
Well, we talk about this a lot just amongst ourselves, and, we chat with athletes, obviously, on a daily basis. We work really closely with them, and it really is this kind of push and pull of, we work with a number of agencies who are amazing, and we're so grateful to work with them, and they're so helpful. And then other times it seems like they're actually hindering, the progression of opportunities for the student athlete. And I think that's an important thing to remember in these conversations, that everybody likes to speak in hyperbole, right? Like, agencies are bad, representation is bad. Well, no, it's not. Bad agencies are bad. Bad representation is bad. But if you can get good representation, it's actually incredibly helpful. Adam, same thing with collectives, right? Like,
yeah, Adam, I think to that point, good agencies that we've seen look at this as like grassroots, as educational, because the best agencies in the world are not going to make a ton of money with their students in college. They're playing a long game and saying,
right.
And some of this has come out of some of the agencies have said this to us. If we help them as educators and finding them opportunities and teaching the families, hopefully when they go pro, they'll be with us. Right. And,
yep.
That's probably the best way I speak. I think that's fantastic. On the flip side, we're seeing like the ambulance chasers, right? Like, how do I insert myself in to make a quick buck? But look, on a $500 deal,
yeah,
you're going to make $50 on it. You're going to have a lot of those deals, right? Like, there's kind of these two camps. And I think we have to be careful and letting athletes know, like, be careful on some of that representation too.
And I think that's a perfect piece of advice right there, is like, if somebody's coming to you saying, I'm going to change your life through these, the things that I can do for you in the NIL space, I'm going to change your life. It's like, all right, that should maybe raise some flags. There are very few life-changing opportunities out there at any stage in life. But that's usually a pretty good, well, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback on that as well is like there's not really any kind of barrier to entry to calling yourself a marketing representative in this space right now, which is kind of scary. And I've seen, I think on the athlete service provider directory, I have about 150 management agencies on there now, and I would imagine out of that 150, probably 130 are like a year, maybe a year and a half old. And they range from, people with experience in this space to people who have, built a really good social media following. And so they're like, now I can represent athletes to, and it's like, that's also scary because it's not necessarily maliciously bad contracts or whatnot. It's like, did this company just Google contract and download the first one they found and they send it off to the athlete? And I don't know. I think you and I talked about this before, Adam. It's like, I think malicious is worse, but not far from ignorance. Like, I don't know.
Malice or ignorance. Yeah. Pick your poison, right? 100%.
And I think we're going to see that over time. I think there was like a gold rush to it, right? But that's why there are platforms that are doing some really good things, right? Whether it's like, the market price team, the influencer team, the open doors team, influencers building local exchanges for schools so they can help those local markets that you talk about, right? Market price in the same way, like they're able to find athletes that actually want NIL deals and are engaging with the ones that are trying to take an active role, right? So there's some pretty cool tech plays that are happening in the space. And I think we'll probably continue to see those disruptions coming in, as we hope we're doing right at Campus Inc. Right, we're trying to make a difference every day too. Adam, what were you going to say?
I liked what you were talking about when a big part of your role as coordinator at SDSU is actually that community engagement, because I think that's a big missing piece in this conversation. Like, you hear the stuff that's happening at Florida where, sure, it's a local businessman, but he's not really a local businessman. Like, he's a billionaire that runs a national conglomeration. It just happens to be headquartered close to the university. But I love what you guys are doing in connecting. San Diego County really is such an incredible community. So being able to kind of position yourselves in that space and connect to local businesses, I think is a huge value to the university. And I like what you talked about in terms of sponsorship dollars as well, because this was a concern of, oh my gosh, companies are going to pull sponsorship dollars from athletic departments in general and start giving them to athletes as individuals. Have you seen that play out at all, or are you really trying to say, like, look, there's a gap, we're going to take it?
So I've definitely talked to our multimedia rights representative about this a number of times and kind of been hypothesizing on it. I don't think, he hasn't shared with me that he's seen actually any of that really happen so far. But I think the real opportunity is that, for those businesses at the local level that are getting priced out of the corporate sponsorship, like, they're engaging with San Diego State athletes, and then they're becoming, they're almost identifying with the brand of San Diego State as well, and potentially could grow into that corporate sponsorship in time. So maybe if some of those current corporate sponsors are reallocating some of their money, maybe they'll get it back on the other end by some of these local businesses as they grow. I don't know. TBD.
Yeah, I love that though, because that's, we talk about disruption in industries and changing in industries, and you hear the conversation around it shutting down opportunities, but it's opening up opportunities, not just on the athlete side, but also for those small businesses to position themselves really strategically. So I love that you guys are doing that at San Diego State. That's really neat.
I think I just have about 84,500 local businesses left to educate on NIL, and then I'll be done.
Is that all?
That's it.
Yeah. So Michelle, how do you, maybe Adam and I need to take a class out of this. How do you prioritize on a day-to-day basis what is most important to get done?
Yeah, hold on. Let me get my notebook. I'm going to take notes here.
Because we don't have enough hours in the day, but we want to say yes to everything. But like, how do you personally do it? Because we need to take notes. What advice do you have?
I would say that one of the biggest challenges in my role is going back. I worked from home for the previous 4 years, and going back into an office has been a bit of a challenge, because it is always just some distractions that are coming up, and you're putting out fires here and whatnot. And so I don't even know if I have a good answer for you.
Maybe you could be part of our therapy group.
One of the things I really have liked that I've implemented at San Diego State, which I think is maybe not so much in office culture, but I've really appreciated, is working off of my calendar. And so for athletes, I know that they don't really like it because they're so used to just popping into offices and going here and going there and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, can you schedule a time and come back? And sometimes they'll come in and talk, and it'll be totally fine. But I really do like it, because not only does it help me stay organized, but it also, I think, helps them on the professional side. It's not like a realistic thing just to walk in, interrupt whatever somebody's doing, sit down for an hour and talk about your problems. And I know it's a big part of office culture. I think that having the pandemic and working from home and having to utilize calendars has kind of shifted that a bit, but still working on it.
If we can solve this problem, we're all going to be millionaires. So
yeah, I think Calendly is great. It's an uphill battle, but it seems like y'all are doing a fantastic job. Michelle, do you foresee you building out this department at San Diego, like having a whole team of NIL managers or whatever?
Yeah, I think we'll kind of see, because that's something that I go back and forth on as well. Is there's so much development going on, and I think the development will continue for a couple years in terms of the programming, what goes into it, what are we partnering with our business school, how are we solving all these issues, and then after that, does it become not as busy? is it going to be mostly like, the academic advisors where it is going to be mostly athletes coming in to meet with me and doing like kind of advising sessions? And I am just not sure what that's gonna look like. So TBD. If we could throw more acronyms in there, that'd be great.
Yeah,
TBD
exactly.
on the NIL and the NFTs and the DAO.
Yeah. No, it's great. Like you said, I was able to be out there last week. Had a chance to chat with some of the team, and you guys have a wonderful staff there, a wonderful department, beautiful facilities right there in San Diego, of course, brand new football stadium, which is a big deal this coming fall. Lots of exciting things going on at San Diego State.
I got a family vacation in San Diego in September.
Might need to turn it into a work trip.
Adam's like, hey, I'm going to go visit some schools while I'm out here. Yeah. I'm like,
that's a new thought.
I see what you're doing.
Awesome.
No, this has been fantastic and just super cool. Everyone follow NIL Network. Michelle, if anyone wants to reach out, what's the best way for them to contact you?
So
I'm sure you need more of that.
NILnetwork.com. Pretty active on Instagram at NIL Network. I have a Twitter. I haven't really been that into it because it's just overwhelming. Or email Michelle at NILnetwork.com.
And I can attest to the fact that she answers all of those because I emailed her at NIL Network and San Diego State and LinkedIn when I was trying to get connected, and she got back on all three platforms. So, Michelle, thank you so much for the time. This has been wonderful. This is your latest episode of the NIL Show with Michelle Meyer from the NIL Network at San Diego State University, Adam Cook, and Stephen Farrig from Campus Inc. Thanks so much, everybody.